Air raid sirens have been blaring throughout Israel today, warning residents to take cover after the IDF intercepted a number of projectiles from Lebanese territory. Overnight, 4 people died and more than 60 were injured in a Hezbollah drone attack on a military base in northern Israel. It's all happening as the U.S. agreed to send a new missile defense system to Israel, along with U.S. troops to operate it, deepening America's involvement in the crisis, now raging on multiple fronts. NBC's Aaron McLaughlin is reporting from Tel Aviv. NBC's Courtney Cuby is at the Pentagon for us. So, Aaron, Israel's Iron Dome is world famous, but it's not perfect. What can you tell us about these attacks from Lebanon?
Yeah, that's right, Chris. And that imperfection was on full display last night when that Hezbollah drone apparently went undetected through Israeli airspace, slamming into the Golani base to the north of Israel as the troops there were eating dinner, killing 4 of them, injuring scores more. I was speaking to a former Israeli commander of Israel's air defense, and he was telling me just how challenging it is to try and detect and prevent drones from entering Israel's airspace and conducting these attacks. He said that they're extremely small, they're extremely slow moving, and they fly at low altitudes. And if you can't detect them, you can't intercept them. Take a listen to what he had to say.
We are not prepared enough for that situation. And the fact is that our enemies recognize that, saw that, and they're using a lot of drones and UAVs from Iraq, from Iran, from Yemen, and of course from Hezbollah.
And to that end, Israel's defense minister says that what happened last night is under investigation, and they plan to learn from that attack. Chris.
Thank you so much for that. And Courtney, American troops are on their way to Israel, along with that missile defense system I mentioned. What has the Biden administration committed to?
Yeah, so these are the troops who would be operating this missile defense system. It's known as THAAD. And what we should remember about it is the critical piece of why this is so important to this threat right now in Israel. It's the first letter in the word THAAD, T. It stands for terminal. What that means is that this missile interceptor system hits into an incoming missile in the terminal phase. That's basically the dive. As that missile is diving towards its target, the THAAD system fires an interceptor. It doesn't even have a warhead. It's what the military calls a kinetic kill vehicle. So basically, it fires a missile into the incoming missile, and it blows itself up using the incoming missile's own warhead or explosives to detonate itself. But why this is so important to this current threat right now, Chris, is because it has the ability, the THAAD system, to intercept shorter range missiles, exactly the kind of threat that is emanating from Hezbollah right now. So this gives the Israelis the ability to take out, to stop some of those shorter range missiles that could be threatening Israel right now. But in addition to that, it also has more of a symbolic message here. This shows, as you mentioned, that the U.S. is willing to send this new system there, as well as dozens of U.S. troops who would be there to carry out the mission, to help use this interceptor system to defend Israel. We've been hearing every single time we hear from U.S. officials about the relationship with Israel, we hear the same terminology, the ironclad commitment to defend Israel. Well, this is really the U.S. putting their money where their mouth is, and not only sending this expensive system, but sending the U.S. troops to operate it. But it also does signify that the U.S. sees this as a threat. And on the drone threat that Aaron was just discussing here, remember how difficult this is for the Israelis to defend against. Of course, we could never forget an incoming drone that killed 3 U.S. service members at Tower 22 in Jordan only months ago. That was the same exact threat that the Israelis are facing from these drones from Hezbollah right now. They fly low, they fly in literally under radars, and they are very difficult to detect against. So it's not just the Israelis who have a difficult time defending against these, Chris.
And Aaron, let me ask you about Gaza, because dozens were killed, hundreds hurt in Israeli airstrikes near, I think, a school and a hospital. That's according to Palestinian officials. What's the latest on that?
You know, Chris, speaking to Palestinians in Gaza, and they say that the situation that's been unfolding there for days now is very reminiscent, they say, to the early days of the war. Aerial bombardment, artillery strikes, Israeli troops on the ground. And to that effect, today, there was a scathing statement released by the UNHCR that really zeroed in particular, with what the Israeli military is doing in northern Gaza, currently concentrated on the Jabalia refugee camp, but also issuing evacuation orders for the entire northern section of the Strip. In this statement, UNHCR saying the Israeli military appears to be cutting off North Gaza completely from the rest of the Gaza Strip and conducting hostilities with absolute disregard for the lives and security of Palestinian civilians. The separation of North Gaza raises further concerns that Israel does not intend to allow civilians to return to their homes, and the repeated calls for all Palestinians to leave northern Gaza raise grave concerns of large-scale forced transfer of the civilian population. Now, the Israeli military will deny those allegations. They say that they're focused right now on the Jabalia refugee camp because Hamas continues to regroup there. Worth noting, this is the fourth time the Israeli military has gone into that particular refugee camp. And what experts looking at the situation will say is what's apparent here is a clear lack of a political solution for the day after of an Israeli military operation. And they will say that there's not only a lack of a plan, a political plan for Gaza and the Palestinians, but also for the situation in Lebanon.